Good evening, folks. My name is Sean Callan there from Lely Centre in Mullingar. So part of the farm management support team here in the centre, looking after getting customers up and running with the robots, getting the best use out of the system. So we are very welcome to our 18th webinar. So we have another 17 of these done, which you'll be able to see on our webpage there at Lely Centre Mullingar if you look it up. If you look through here, I'll share the screen and you can see exactly where to find these. So once you go onto the website, you can scroll on down, look for the webinars, and you'll see all of our previous webinars here right across for the last 2 or 3 years. So we have anything from farm layout and infrastructure to grassland management. We're also doing feeding high yielding cows, large herd webinars, zero grazing, solar power. So there's a range of various different options there if you want to tune in to see what is available or what options are there when it comes with robotic milking. Also have a couple of different virtual farm tours. So if you're not able to get it on farm, we have a couple of these here to bring you through a few different systems and a few different design setups, so you can look at this from the comfort of your own home. So go on to Lely Centre Mullingar, look it up on Google, open up the website and look for the webinars, and you'll be able to see the previous 17 that's here. Along with that, this one, once it's recorded and finished off, it'll also be going up here to watch back. Before we go any further, I just want to let you know if you have any questions or any information or want any questions prior to the speakers, just at the bottom of your screen there should be a chat or a Q&A function. So feel free, punch them through there and we'll try and cover as many of them as possible at the end if we have time. So first things first, I'll give you a bit of a rundown just on the Horizon app, just for the mobile, bit of a brief overview of what the robot does before handing over to Sinead Gallagher. So Sinead is also part of the FMS team here in Mullingar, and she's going to go through a bit of the overview of the desktop software of Horizon, go through the key features of the system, what most farmers are finding useful, before we go on to Grania Murray, then another addition onto the FMS team here in Mullingar. And she is going to bring you through how the system can be used to actually help improve the accuracy of making your decisions when it comes to drying off cows. So how to look back over a cow's lactation, see what issues she's had, and see is she possibly a candidate for selective dry cow. And then lastly but not leastly, we're going on to Donal Lynch there from Sleeve Bloom Vets, and also a member of the XL Vets community. So Donal is going to be going through the do's and the don'ts, I suppose, of drying off cows, what to watch out for when you're doing selective dry cow, and how best to use that with your farm, or what questions I suppose to answer and ask yourself if you're going down that route. And also going to touch a bit on the dry cow management and go through actually the drying off procedure. So once you get through all of that, folks, we'll be coming back to me at the end for a Q&A session. So feel free, like I said, questions and into the Q&A box or the chat box down at the bottom. So just for those of you that might not have seen a robot milking before or seen what it does, just to give you a brief rundown as to what it does and how it does it. So first things first, when a cow walks in, there's a reader up in front, reads the cow, so it closes the gate behind her, and you can see in the top left there's a camera image then that follows that cow to position the arm in underneath her. Feed trough at the front then where the cow can get a few nuts. So it typically feeds on a feed yield basis, so depending on how much meal the cow is getting is completely down to how much milk she's given and what we set on the Horizon system. So the arm then comes in along underneath the cow. So first thing it does is it brushes down every teat, make sure it sterilizes it and cleans before attaching the cups then onto each quarter individually. So the beauty of this is we're trying to get individual quarter milking, that you're not getting quarters over milked or under milked, and we're also getting a good clean sterile teat before the milking actually happens. So once the cups go on, the brush is washed and sterilised before the next cow comes in. And obviously every bit of milk that goes down through a set of sensors that will detect it for butterfat, protein, do a cell count reading on every cow. It'll also measure your milk conductivities. So it's giving you a world of information really on that cow. And obviously it all has to go back through to Lely Horizon for you to actually use that information and make decisions on the cow. So once the milking is finished, each cup comes off individually. You can see that. And once that cup comes off, it'll basically be able to teat spray the cow and return her back out to the shed, either for cubicles or for a grazing system, to be able to walk back out through the grazeway and head out to grass. So we can see here's your teat spray. It's getting a very concentrated dose onto each teat individually. So it's really repeating that process with consistency. There's no missed teats, and we're trying to get as good cover as possible to try and combat any future mastitis or cell count issues. From there, then it pushes all the milk out to the bulk tank. And in between cows, then as well, there's the option of steam cleaning cups to try and knock out any excess bacteria that might be there. So there's always an option there to try and prevent mastitis. Obviously, again, with that, afterwards, if you have a cow that's separated out the milk will be dumped out of these buckets, and the robot will also do a wash in between those two cows, so as the next cow's milk is not contaminated either with colostrum, high cell count milk, or with antibiotics. So that's just a brief rundown of what the robot does. Obviously, you'll see what the information looks like now when we go across to the rest of the presentation. Just coming on from that then, so obviously we've seen what the robot can do and how it milks. So just before we go on to Grania, Sinead and Donal's bit, I just want to give you a brief rundown on some of the features that Horizon does have. One of which then is one of the mobile apps. So obviously everything comes through to the phone. It's a great tool that a lot of farmers are using very well. So you can see up on the screen there now, this is just a stream off a phone with the demo app on it. So you can see we have a list of tasks here on farm. Obviously the same as what Grania Sinead is going to go through later on, but we can tap into each of these and see straight away what the story is with certain cows. So obviously cow 61243, she's 13 hours and 56 minutes since she was last milked. So what we can do is we can tap on her cow number and it'll bring you into her cow overview page, which you can see here. So at the top of your page, we can get a full breakdown of what that cow is. So you can see she's due to dry off on the 7th of December. And expected calving date is on the 5th of February. So scroll down through, you still have all the same information that you'll hear of later on. So it's very handy, comes right to the pocket, and you can see exactly what's going on. If you wanted to draft cows out, then it's very simple. You can just press the plus button, hit the routing, and draft that cow into wherever you want to draft her to. So if we say we wanted to put her into the straw shed and we want to put it out for the next 3 days, we can set it for the next 3 days, and that cow is going to be automatically drafted out, waiting for us ready to go. So if we go back out to the dashboard, then we can get a full look at it again from here. So same as what the two girls are going to be going through later on, but you can see the KPIs here at the top, and you can get a breakdown of where the herd is at the moment. So you can see the herd that we're on here at the minute is 15.5 kilo average. And are currently running at about 5.03% fat and 3.96% protein, doing 2.2 milking. So herd is coming close for drying off, but it gives you a great tool that you can look in and see wherever you're from and just find out what state everything is at. Go down through it here, you have your attentions, so you can see there's 2 attentions for brush. Again, you can tap in and see Robot 3 and Robot 2 need the brushes changed. So we can go in and edit those then. So rather than having to go to the computer at all, you get all of this coming through to the phone that you can use straight away. So it's just one of the big features that a lot of people have been talking about, and a lot of farmers seem to be very happy using. It makes it very easy if you're out in the middle of a field that you can draft cows out or mark them with AIs without having to go back to the office as such. You can do it all on the move. Or even if you're not on farm at all and somebody wants to check an animal, you can route the animal for them and they're sitting out waiting for them whenever they land. So without that, then we'll just move on and we'll pass you over to Sinead, who's going to give you a bit more of a rundown of the program actually on the PC, so you see it a little bit differently, and you get a full breakdown of the overall dashboard and a few of the other features that's available on it. So over to you, Sinead.
Hello, my name's Sinead. Today I'll be going through what is Horizon. So Horizon is basically your new program that's coming from Lely. It's an updated version of T4C, which everyone's going to be moving over to in the next month. It gives you up-to-date data from the cows, your astronauts, your graze weights, and your vectors, and it's basically your modern era support tool. So basically here you have your dashboard. It has your KPIs here, your key performance indicators. It also shows your advices, your attentions, your favorite reports, and your tasks over here. So I'll start off by going through your KPIs. So here it's slightly different to T4C. So it actually gives you more information where you're given the last 9 days on a graph here at the bottom. So this is your total milk production over the last 9 days. So you can see kind of the variation in the graph. Here you're showing your current milk production, and behind here it shows you your weekly average. So it goes through like your milking cow per day, your current like milk yield, your milk solids, fat and protein, and it's constantly giving you a graph for the last like week or 9 days, and then your failure rate here as well. And you can edit this to suit yourself, so you can add KPIs that you want to keep track of, or take them away to suit yourself. So then going over here to the top left of the screen, you have your dashboard. So this is how you kind of edit or like do anything with your cows here. So you have like your milk now button. If you were to click on it there, you can search for your cow number if you want to put any cows on milk now. If you look again, you have your routing tasks, your inseminations, dry off, heat treat or health treatments, milk separation, pregnancy checks, the whole lot's there. You can edit milk settings. So it's very straightforward, and it's kind of clearly laid out on the left here. You can also add in on the bottom here any cows you want to add in, like feedstuffs, bulk tank results, or like medicines, which I know some of you will do for dry off as well. Anything that you had on T4C should automatically transfer across as well. So if you have medicines added in already on T4C, it should already be there on Horizon when you transfer over. You have your favorite reports down the bottom here. So again, you can edit this to suit yourself, but it basically will bring up your favorite reports. So here we have like report 42, which is your cow daily production. So if you click in there, you can see that all your cows are here. Your lactation days, your day production. So you can see here that like cow 3590 is doing 18.8 kilos a day. You have her milk solids here, and it goes so on. So like it even on the far right of the screen here, you can see that her cell count is very low, down at 26. So that's your cow daily production. Again, like if you were to wanting to do something with a block of cows, you can just click here and you can go up to your dashboard. So say I have 3 cows selected there, I can go up to my dashboard here, and if I wanted to say put them all on milk now, I can just press milk now and they're all there. So like you're still able to do pretty much everything that you were able to do on T4C. It's just a different layout, but it's much clearer. So if I go back to my dashboard there on the side, we're back to that home screen here. So here you have your tasks, which are kind of like the main day-to-day things that you'll be doing with your herd. So up the top left here, we have our fetch cows, which is just like collect cows. So here you can see I have 6 cows to collect here that have gone over the set amount of hours that they were for milking. So you can see here that 3590 has gone nearly 16 hours for milking. So like again, she'd be one to collect, although she is quite late in lactation days, so she wouldn't be under as much pressure milk-wise. So if we go back to the home screen again here, you can see that your heat insemination is basically like your heat graph again. You have 3 cows in heat here, so you have 951 over, and you can see that she has a heat probability of 72%, so she's definitely on. The other 2 are definitely on as well because they're both 76 and 80%. And you can see here this graph that the mouse is on. Basically, the green in the graph is, or in the like line here, is basically the most optimal time to AI them, and your yellow is kind of nearly like that's from where your little circle will start off, and when they're coming to the end, kind of the ideal time to inseminate, the dot will be down here. So any cow that comes up in heat, your collar will detect that, and it will come up on your heat and insemination list on the dashboard. So if I go back to the dashboard again, you can see here in the other tasks we have, calving. So all your cows will show up for calving that are due to calve in the next month or so. We have here we have like our health report down the bottom here. So this shows up any cows that are showing any sickness. So all the cows on the list here are like showing under 30% sickness. But it, as you as a farmer have like accurate recordings of anything that like the cow might be sick, or like it monitors rumination, somatic cell count, milk drops, conductivity. So you're getting very accurate information from the robots at all times. And it's constantly giving you reports on how cows milking out of each quarter. So again, like you're getting information there that you'd like more information there than you would ever get from like a milk recording. So if I go back here now, you can see here like on the tasks as well, you'd have your health treatments, your dry off. So there, that's your list of cows that are due to dry off over the next month. So they'll start showing up once you have your calving dates or your scanning results in. Again, like you can put your scanning results in, reproduction check, you have your routing overview and your milk separation. So like if you have any cows on milk separation, they'll show up here. And if you did want to separate a cow, all you have to do is click the search for cow up here, click into her number, and then say if I wanted to separate 3212, all I do is go into the plus button here, click on milk separation, and then you can pull her out for however long. So it's very similar to, you know, what you'd be doing on T4C. It's just easier to see. So at that, I'll hand you over to Grania, who'll be going through the dry cow therapy. So thank you for listening. Okay.
Hi, how are you? I'm Grania. I'm also part of the FMS team here at Lely Mullingar. Thanks, Sinead. Sinead is just after giving you a brief overview of our main dashboard on Horizon. I'm going to show you how to individually go through cows and mainly look at selection for dry cow therapy. Most of you spring calving herds are coming close to drying off, so it's a good time of year now to go through this. So I'll just briefly show you how to go through a cow here now. So I'm just going to search 3212. And this brings up her overview. She, in her last 24 hours, done 38.8 kilos of milk. Her weekly average is 36.4. That's great. Briefly here then, we see her lactation curve. Today, that's where we are today. She was previously inseminated twice. And this is her prediction, this yellow box here, that's what she's predicted to do for the rest of the year. So down here we have our health index. So Horizon ranks it from 0 to 100, 100 being very sick, 0 being perfectly healthy cow, 3 to 1 2, not a problem with her, no health attentions, great. We go down here then, we have our cow ranking. That also, so your average is 100. Every cow for your herd will average 100. If she's above 100, great, she's doing well. This 3212 is 106. She's great for production, averaging for health. She's just 1 below the average for reproduction. So that these might be points that you might look at when you're picking her bulls to breed. Simple things like that. Great on robot efficiency, 103. That's one main thing we also want to be looking at is robot efficiency. So that is just a brief overview there of what you're looking at when you're going into an individual cow. So we're back to home screen here on Horizon, and on our left hand side we have our dry off task. Okay, this is a good report to have as most of you are coming close to drying off soon. This will show us any cows due to dry off within the next 10 days. Okay, so there we have there all our cows expected to dry off. So we can click in. Okay, so we have these cows here. We can batch them aside, put them in a separation area off our robot, feed them a diet to pull them back on milk, feed them hay, get them dried up. Great. So we know that we have to dry off these cows. We just need to know what are we going to dry them off with. Are we using just dry cow sealer only, or are we using an antibiotic and dry cow sealer? So how we can get this information off Horizon is, so we can click in on each individual cow. So we'll click here on 3590. She's due to be dried off on the 25th. Go into 3590, go into her milk, and we search for milk quality. This is going to show me 3590 somatic cell count since she's calved down. So we can see here, She is relatively, yeah, she is under 100,000 all year round. She's definitely not a candidate for antibiotics. We can just put sealer in her. So that's 3590. We can then go back to our dry off task for the next couple of days. We go on to our next cow, 3600. She's due to be dried off on the 28th. Click into her. Same thing again, go to milk, look at her quality. Now, this is the same thing again, that green bar is her cell count, but as you can see, this has been spiking up and down all year. She would definitely be a candidate for antibiotics. So we're back here in our dry off task. We are clicking into count 917. Go to her milk and go to her quality. Okay, so we look at her graph here throughout the year. She has been steady with some sudden spikes. Okay, so had we have only, so on your normal milk and herd, you're only getting information on cell count when you milk record. So had we have milk record her in, say, in March, again in May, and again at the back end of the year, we were only getting these low periods. We weren't getting the spikes in February or the spikes in April. So we would have taken her as only a candidate for sealer. But because we are taking a sample from the robot every milking, we are seeing cell count for every milking. So the more samples, the more accurate your selective dry cow therapy or your drying off is going to be. So we can see her spikes here and here and here. This is telling us that she will be a candidate for antibiotic dry cow therapy. So she's going to get her antibiotic tube and her sealer. Okay, so Sinead has taken you through a full rundown on Horizon, or a good rundown on Horizon. I have shown you how to search an individual cow and how to look at somatic cell counts on cows and on our list for drying off cows. Donal is now going to take you through the physical procedure of how to dry off a cow.
My name is Donal Lynch. I'm a veterinary surgeon working in Slieve Bloom Vets in Tullamore in County Offaly. On a day-to-day basis, I work with my farming clients to both look towards preventing disease, manage disease prevention on farm, and also to treat problems when they occur. In our area, there's been an awful lot of robots installed over the last number of years, and that has significantly contributed to the information we have available to us when it comes to dairy cows. In particular this time of the year when we look at drying off, and what information is there and how best to get that information out of the robot to make it of use to you as a farmer and to me as a vet. So today we're looking at drying off cows. In Ireland, by and large, we dry off cows for a 60-day dry period to allow that cow to prepare for calving and for her next lactation. So we do need to look at things like body condition score and manage that so she's going to calve down in the right condition. But this evening we're really looking at the treatment to prevent and control mastitis. When we look at that, this is a time when we can treat cows that have subclinical chronic infections, and we can also manage towards preventing mastitis in the next lactation. Recent changes in legislation have meant that we no longer use what's called blanket dry cow therapy, which is antibiotics and teat seal to every cow. And we look at each cow as an individual animal and what the best treatment option is for her. So in some cases we will decide not to use any antibiotics and we'll use a teat seal only. In other cases we will look, vets in conjunction with the farmer will look and decide what antibiotic is most suitable for that cow. I would generally speaking look and say the criteria I want to know if I'm not going to use an antibiotic, the bulk cell count needs to be under 200,000 all year, and the individual cows that we're not going to give antibiotics to need to be under a cell count of 100,000 all year. They need to have no cases of clinical mastitis during the year, and they need to be a good conformation. So they have a nice tight bag with nice teats with quite closed orifices. So they're going to be more resistant to infection and problems with mastitis during the dry period and also during their subsequent lactation. We're now going to move on and look at one cow that we've selected here for drying off. This cow we are going to use antibiotics with because she had a case of clinical mastitis during the year and she's currently running at a cell count of 250,000. So this cow will need antibiotics. I would say in reaching decisions as to what cow needs the antibiotic, you as a farmer should consult your own vet and make an individual decision for what's right for your farm and your cow. So it's important when you're drying off cows to come prepared. We have everything here ready to go for this cow that we're going to dry off in a minute. So I have my antibiotic tubes if I'm going to use antibiotics, and in this case with this cow we are. I have my teat seal tubes which we're going to use in all cows. I have my cotton wool swabs soaked in surgical spirits, all here ready to go. I have my teat spray for afterwards. I have a can of marking spray which I will always use as a belt and braces to say a cow has been dried off so there's no mistake. I have spare gloves, and most importantly I have a notebook and pen, and I'm going to use the notebook and pen to record the tag number of the cows that we have dried off today. Okay, so we're here now with this cow ready to be dried off. We're trying to make life as easy as we can on ourselves. So you'll see that her tail is nice and clipped and clean. We have a kick bar on her to reduce the chances of her kicking, and her bag is reasonably clean. So clean gloves. I'm going to wipe my hands again just to make sure, and I'm going to get our cotton wool swabs that are soaked in methylated spirits, and we're going to start with the farthest away teats to clean them, concentrating on the teat orifice. So it's important when we're doing this to be as clean and hygienic as possible to reduce any chances of introducing contamination. I'm going to take my antibiotic tube now, and I'm going to work in the reverse, and I'm going to introduce my antibiotic tube into the teat closest to me. And I'll infuse that with some pressure and then massage it with my hand back up into the bag. I'm now going to take my teat seal tube, and the teat seal tube I want to see remaining in the teat as close to the bottom of the teat as possible. So I'm pinching the top of the teat now as I'm introducing it. I'm filling up the teat with the teat seal substance, and as I'm infusing it I'm drawing out, and we end up with a piece of teat seal coming out at the teat orifice, and that's exactly the way we want it. Okay, now I'm going to continue and do the other 4 teats in the same manner. Okay, so moving on to our final teat. Again, the antibiotic infused at some pressure, massaged up into the bag, then coming with my teat seal, holding the top of the teat, and again I want to keep this in the teat itself, and as I would have drawn it I have a little piece of teat seal coming out at the base of the teat. Now I'm going to come with my teat spray, and I'm going to spray each teat with a teat spray. So finally I'm going to mark the cow here as a belt and braces that there won't be any mix up, that she has got an antibiotic, and I'm going to then record her number off her ear tag or her collar, which is 1898, and we're going to record that in our notes for the date we've dried her off and what we've used. So now we have the cow dried off. In an ideal world we want to move her away from the milking environment, in this case the robot, so she's not hearing the robot in the background, which would stimulate her towards milk production. We want to make sure that she goes into a clean, dry environment, and that of course is a challenge in Ireland this time of the year, which is when we dry off most of our cows. So cubicles well bedded with lime or sawdust or whatever is appropriate on your farm, and then most importantly monitor that cow for any signs of problems in the short time after drying off. So in the days to weeks after you dry off, keep a good eye that there's no sign of swelling or inflammation in the cow's udder, or that she doesn't present with any signs of illness herself systemically.
Hi folks, so you're all very welcome. Hopefully you got to hear all of that came through. So first things first, we'll jump right into the questions. There's a few questions that came through just throughout the presentation, but obviously if anyone has any more, there's a Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen, so please feel free to fire any additional questions that you might have in there for us. So first one, I think I'll fire it off, Donal, and I'll pass it on to you. So this is coming in from Peter. Does it matter what antibiotic tubes are used on farm?
Thank you, Sean. Absolutely it does. Like as I said in the video, every farm is individual and every cow is individual. So what do we want the antibiotic tube to do when we're using antibiotics? We want it to be active against the bacteria that are in there and active for the longest length of time possible. So what we try to do with our clients is we want to know what bacteria are present, ideally in the individual cow, but definitely on the farm, because obviously the bacteria that you have present on your farm are likely to be among your group of cows. So I recommend when people have clinical cases of mastitis, they take a sample and put it in the freezer and hold on to that. And then when we have a few together, we can send them off for that farm and get a picture of the type of bacteria that are on the farm. In some cases, then we'll do sensitivity testing on them to see what antibiotic works. But in other cases, we know certain antibiotics work against certain bacteria quite well. So that will inform us on what tube to use. After that, then I look and I want to know how long is the cow dry for. So ideally in Ireland, we aim for a 60-day dry cow period. And that allows us to use a tube with a roughly 60-day withdrawal. But in some cases, for one reason or another, a cow gets milked on for longer and the dry cow period we have is shorter. So we have to use that information when we're picking the antibiotic tube we're using. So as I say, it is obviously with antibiotics, the biggest thing when using antibiotics is you use as little as possible, but when you do need to use it, you use the right antibiotic for the right bacteria in the right way.
Good answer, Donal. Just for somebody, like not everybody has got good samples taken now over the last year. Maybe they might have got a couple of bad samples taken. Is it worth taking a few random samples of high cell count cows if you know about them from a milk recording and culture test those, or is a bulk tank test a better option if you don't have those samples?
I think, Sean, it'd be fair to say a bulk tank sample is the least valuable of all. Okay, it has some merit, but I think the least valuable. Absolutely, as I said, we recommend taking clinical cases to culture and have them. But when not having them, we would routinely enough take, let's say, 6 of the highest cell count cows coming up to drying off. And I suppose if you remember, like a cell count is a cow's reaction to infection or insult within the udder. So the theory being that when your cell count is over a nominal figure, and we generally speaking accept it's 200, that cow has bacteria in there. So you're very likely to culture bacteria if you have a cell count over 200. And when you have a culture, well then that is going to be useful to you to pick out the right tube.
Super. So another question just through here from Oisin. So it's, can you set your own criteria for your dry cow list, or does Horizon automatically do it for you? So I might take that one. So obviously, as Donal said, we're always going to target for a 60-day dry period anyway. So the default settings within Horizon is 60 days. Some farmers do tweak it. I know some farmers will drop that back by maybe a 6-week dry. And likewise, there's other farmers that are bringing it up to a 10-week dry period maybe for heifers. So it can be a bit customizable on farm. Obviously, you want to stick with the recommendations of your vet. Just make sure it's right for your farm and for the cows. Next question then was, when drying off cows, aside from the SCC graph, is there any other criteria that would qualify her for an antibiotic? I think I might give that one across to you, Donal.
Yes, there is. So I think on the video we said about confirmation. So confirmation is going to be one thing. So even if you have everything good appearing on a cell count, your bulk cell count under 200, the individual cow less than 100. But let's say, for example, she's an older cow with a very pendulous bag and with quite open teeth. I would use that depending on the farm. And I would say, I think in this case, this is a cow that we would put antibiotics into. That'd be one example. And there could be loads of examples. Another example, we all have cows that aren't very good to lie in cubicles. We have cows that lie up backwards in cubicles, and we've an odd cow who refuses to lie in cubicles. So if I had a cow to refuse to lie in cubicles, I would say yes, I would put antibiotics in her because she's far more likely to pick up bacteria over the dry period like that. And then look, there can be various other reasons to do with management factors on farm. If cubicles are tight, you don't have enough cubicles, or I know I came across one farm that ended up not getting their cubicles roofed in time in a new shed. So they ended up with a small number of open-topped cubicles that they had to use. Wouldn't be an ideal situation. So those sort of things will inform you on why you might use antibiotics outside the details of your somatic cell count. But just maybe, Sean, to come back on the length of the dry cow period, I think dry cow period and the length as well as individual, like traditionally we're all going to dry off cows a little bit earlier if they're in a poor body condition score. Whereas if they're in a better body condition score, we might milk them on. And that's a tool that you might use to get a better body condition score at calving down time.
Super. And just on the criteria for antibiotics, just I suppose a question of my own, let's say a cow that might have had mastitis during the year, would it be reasonable to treat that 1 quarter only, or would you try and go for a whole cow approach, I suppose, with sealer only or antibiotics?
When it comes to drying off, I'd be a whole cow. 4 teats get antibiotics or no teats get antibiotics. Occasionally somebody will ask me, when it comes to drying off and they have a cow with clinical mastitis, can they put in a milking cow tube and follow with a dry cow tube? I'd say absolutely no. If you have a cow and she's clinical mastitis, you need to treat that clinical mastitis, get that better before you dry off. But as I say, in all cases, if the decision is to use antibiotics, I would say that decision is on a cow basis.
Super. And then, for example, if a cow went dry a couple of weeks ago, so maybe went dry on 1 quarter a couple of weeks ago, question here was, should you still give that quarter a tube or a sealer or leave well enough alone?
I suppose not really a simple answer to that. So generally speaking, when a cow goes dry, she produces a seal herself and seals the end of the teat. Work done would show that there's a huge difference in cows, and maybe our modern cows have much tighter teats, whereas if I go back when I qualified as a vet 20 years ago, you could easily enough hand milk a lot of dairy cows, whereas most of the cows I see now, the teats would be too small for that. If the seal has formed, you definitely shouldn't be going near it. So I think on balance, if a cow has dried off on 1 quarter, I would try and stay away from that, unless I'm looking and saying she does have a high cell count. Then you would have to go in with antibiotics or a seal. But if she's a low cell count and everything else fits in, and I was going with seal only, I'd put the seal in the 3 teats. But I'm not saying that's a black and white answer. Lots of people could differ on it. I would say if somebody said they were going to put in a seal, similar to how people seal heifers, I wouldn't fight with somebody over that. I think that's a decision, a question that could have several right answers.
Yeah, fair enough. But I suppose the number one thing is whatever you're doing to keep it as clean and hygienic as possible.
Absolutely. And look, Sean, you make a good point there. Like, always remember when we're putting in seal, only in particular, with antibiotics as well, but in particular if you're using only seal, it's hugely important to be pedantically clean putting them in. And you'll all have seen in the video we did there, that's a farm that I go to, and they have a very good setup for drying off cows. Not everybody has that, and you know, if you're trying to work in a crush where you're down on your knees, that's a lot more challenging. Maybe, for example, if the crush is outside and it's on a wet day, that's challenging. So I'd say, as a farmer, pick your time for drying off the cows as well. Like, you want ideally dry, good weather. Whether you're inside or outside, you want the cows as clean and dry as possible. And look, we all want to be in good form, particularly if you're doing a number of them. You certainly don't want to be doing it on an evening after you've been working at something else all day and tired.
So another question that's come through is, can I dry a cow off from the Horizon app, or do you always have to go to the computer? So if you went back to, so if you watch back over on the playback, you'll see when we go through, I think Grania picks up on it, when you click the plus button, it gives you an option to actually dry off that cow. So what we normally try and do is we try and get treatment plans set up on farm. So between the farmer and the vet, what tubes has been used on farm, is there a selective plan in place, and we set up the different treatment plans then that's available or that's going to be used. So at least then, whatever you do go to dry off cows, it's automatically withdrawing your milk for you. For any antibiotic tubes that's used, But as well as that, you have a very good record system then of what cow got what treatment at dry off, that you can look back over forevermore. So it builds a bit of information, but you can do it from the phone app or you can do it from the desktop. Next question, Donal, is how important is the diet prior to drying off the cow, and does putting them on hay or straw help much?
Yes. So like, I suppose if you look at cows, if we want them to produce more milk, we feed them more. And, you know, I think there was one question in there, Sean, as well, about once a day and feeding on once a day. So like, the idea of once a day in the springtime is we feed the cows the same amount, but we only take out half the milk to allow them to build up body condition score. So when you ask the question, is nutrition important? Yes, we want to reduce the energy intake of the cow coming up to drying off, so it's going to reduce her milk yield. Do you feed her hay and straw, or do you leave her on silage or grass? I suppose that depends on the setup. I'd say you definitely stop feeding her meal and you reduce the energy intake, and that's going to reduce the yield. And like, it's going to depend, of course, on cows, but we'd like cows down around 10, 11 litres when we're drying them off, depending on the herd. I know some people will say that in Holland, for example, in high yielding cows, they're often trying to dry off cows given 26 litres a day, but there's a much bigger challenge to that. So if you can get the cow to reduce milk, best way of doing that is by diet. And if you can get her to reduce milk, that'll make your job easier drying her off.
Lovely. Just coming on from that, then obviously the next question was, with Horizon, is it possible to set a once a day milking but twice a day feeding the robot just for minding the body conditions? So it's not just as straightforward as putting a cow on a once a day feed and once a day milk and twice a day feed. There is tweaks we can do. So depending on the farm, we try and work with the farmer to set up a group to essentially allow more meal per visit, but restrict the visits back. It's not just an exact science at the minute. We're trying to work on something that we can get that. At the moment, it's not strictly available for a once a day milk but twice a day feed. But we have I suppose a patch for any farms that's using that at the moment. Again, it's probably more beneficial, Donal, you might come in on this, more beneficial in the spring after calving as opposed to now coming close to drying off.
Absolutely. And look, Sean, I think, to be fair, this is more relevant in a parlour system where you have cows that are losing body condition score and producing too much milk in a system where they don't have the opportunity to individually feed cows. And as a result, the energy they're taking in isn't matching the energy they're putting out. And a solution we would often use there is, well, you bring them in and you feed them, but you don't milk them. Okay. Some people will say that can increase the cell count transiently, but on balance, we would find that the cow is a much healthier cow if you can control that body condition score loss in the early period after calving. But I think a robot farm, it's much easier to manage that, where you can treat each cow as an individual and manage what she's feeding. That energy balance is much more closely balanced than, let's say, it would be on a typical parlour farm.
So we have time for another one or two questions, folks. So I just have the next one here is, can I singe the cow's hair on her udder while drying off, or is it better to do it after calving? So I presume that's maybe to singe the hair maybe a week before rather than after calving. What would be your take on that, Donal? Would you try and singe or leave the cows off?
Look, I suppose my take on the singeing is that it's more for the working of the robot. Traditionally, it's not something that would be done on parlour farms at any stage, maybe coming in a little bit more in recent years. But anything to reduce the amount of hair and dirt around the teats when you're drying them off, I think would be good. I would see no reason not to singe them sometime coming up to drying off. And maybe you do this more than once, you might do it periodically depending on the cow. And some cows will have very clean bags with very little hair. Others will have quite a significant amount of hair. But I think the answer to the question is anything to reduce the risk of contamination is good.
Yeah, it was one question I got asked a lot over the last while. It's not actually come through here today, but tails. should I clip a tail at drying off? Like personally, I would think you'd be inclined to try and clip all your tails well ahead of drying off, so that in the week or weeks leading up to it, you're not getting that dirtiness slapping up onto another. So it's something just to keep an eye on. It's keep that udder hygiene as good as possible. Do your best to try and keep minimal dirt in that area. So definitely, if you're getting cows ready for drying off, have tails clipped well in advance rather than doing it on the day, because obviously you want to try and keep it as clean as possible. So no point getting extra dung on the hands when you're going in drying teats. Last question, then we'll wrap it up after that. If I didn't use reagent for the cell counter during the year at times, will my cell count graph be accurate enough for a selective dry cow? I suppose I'll probably start it. It's very hard, so depending on how long the cell counter wasn't working for. So if you hadn't got fluid in it for 3 or 4 days, I wouldn't be massively concerned. If you missed it for 6 weeks, I'd be a lot more concerned. So it's a bit of how much information have you got and how big of a block is missing. Obviously, the more information you can have, the easier it is to make a decision. When you're missing big blocks of information, I presume, Donal, it does pose a bit more of a challenge to making a decision on farm. Or
yeah, look, certainly this year I've been asked by a lot of farmers who don't have robots what they should do about drying off cows, and I'm saying, well, you need to pick your cow that had a cell count less than 100 all year. And like Grania made a good point about how you can see in a robot every day, and that is hugely important. If you are missing gaps, and like if somebody says to me, I'm not milk recording, well, I'm going to say, well, it's very hard for me to tell you which cow not to use an antibiotic on. And the same would apply if you have a gap here on a robot. I think it's difficult to make a confident decision. But I would say, in my experience with farmers who are using robots, and in our practice, we have a very high penetration of robots. I would say to pretty consistently across them, the cell counts tend to be lower than they are in your typical parlour farm. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, how a robot works. But the big key thing is the information it gives you, that you can look and say, yes, I can confidently say my cow has had a cell count of 40 or 50,000 every day for whole lactation. She's had no cases of clinical mastitis. You can be very confident there to go in with a teat seal only. If we're missing a gap on that, your confidence decreases.
No, I think all very, very valid points. No, so look, I think we'll wrap it up with there, folks. We're just on the 55-minute mark, so we'll get finished up before the hour. Look, this is all recorded, so it'll be put out afterwards in a follow-up email. So any playbacks you can go back and watch over. Just want to thank Donal Lynch there from Sleeve Bloom Vets massively. Some serious input. Very good points for us all to take in now for the next couple of weeks, just through the drying off season. So I think, Donal, if you have 2 or 3 main points to take home with it today, what would be the 2 or 3 you'd send everybody home with?
I suppose, look, a lot of them have been covered. When you are drying off cows, to pick your cows and use your records. And number 2, hygiene is to be really clean, putting it in. And I suppose, look, the third thing I'd say is, talk to your vet and use them. Maybe traditionally as vets, we haven't been, as much working in prevention as we would all like to be, that, everybody's busy and the cow calving and the sick cows sort of take priority. But like, there's huge advantages in being able to manage health before it becomes a problem. And I think the whole robot system and Horizon is going to feed into that. And when we have the information to look at diet and cell count and fertility, there's huge opportunities there. And I'd say to try and work with vets and other advisors in relation to that, and with yourselves and Lely, there's lots of information out there, and we can all make the thing work better for everybody.
Brilliant. No, look, I want to thank Sinead and Grania as well for their contribution on Horizon, and also for William Conlon then for doing the video with Donal on farm. So look, thanks a million as well lastly to all of you that have joined us this evening. There's a few questions we didn't get answered, so if you have any more questions, feel free to get in touch with us there in Lely Centre Mullingar, and we'll do our best to answer any extra questions that you might have. Thanks a million, and good night, everyone.
Thank you.